Hello everyone. Today it's about another mode of action of the hip joint. In one of the other episodes, we already had put the focus on the sinking and rising via the hip flexor. And due to the fact that the hip joint is a ball-shaped joint, so one of its various functions is here the opening and closing of the groin, just like a hinge mechanized joint for opening and closing. The sinking and rising induces the force connection from my own center to the center of the earth, primarily just to get direct access from the earthbound essential power source. And the hinge function of the groin, perhaps you can see it at the movement and fall of the folds of my pants. This function enables me to give the primer vertical force flow from the ground connection and to address it also into horizontal directions. As you can see, given my hips would have had eyes, I simulate it with my fingers. This would be the hip eyes moving view, indicating that again the hip is the key player in activating and steering the forces, and of course center-based. One way of training this particular function of the hip, of the groin, and also the shifting of the weight in the legs and feet, I imagine I would stand in the midst of a clock face. And at the starting point, my toes are pointing to the 12 o'clock position. In this case, I'm sinking into my left leg, the right leg becomes empty more and more, and now both groin joints open simultaneously so that the right foot, like a clock hand, finds its resting point at the 3 o'clock position, for example. Now the weight shifts over into the new positioned leg, and so that the other leg becomes empty, and as this weight shift is completed, both groin joints coming into a closing mode again, and the left foot can slide side by side to the right foot. In this manner, you can pass through all 90-degree steps of the clock until you arrive at the 12 o'clock position again. When the opening and closing of the groin joints is trained properly, these rotating forces flow through the body and move upwards into the arms. And the less I try to interfere with additional activity, here the more clear and freely the forces find their way through the body. So that already a tiny sinking impulse is enough to guide this rising wave via the groin joints up into the arm. Here I showed it very slowly, a little more fast and dynamic. It looks like about this. And this opening helps me to get my arm up in this position. When I would lock up and tighten my hip, I would have to do all the work by myself to lift it in such a way and to get into the same position. And this demands a kind of isolated effort, while when I start again from the ground by the sinking and dynamic opening, then the forces find their way and work for me. Also a nice side effect, so to speak, when these springy forces are activated, my arm almost flies into position, where it gains potential height energy, sorry for this little physics class here, and this energy comes back into use and action by simply releasing the arm, letting it fall down. No additional activity, it already has got the height energy. If it does anything at all, it's just a yielding to the already active attracting force of the earth in relation to my arm. So sending the arm via the sinking, opening, and releasing. When I want to intensify these forces, this can be done by an intelligent releasing of the joint chain. When I send the arm upwards, and it has found its position about at shoulder height, I can then step by step release the joints. I just concentrate on the arm only here. So first the shoulder starts to sink, elbow sinks, wrist joint sinks. And due to this chained and sequenced releasing of the joints again, we induce this special springing force, the eccentric muscle force. By that we generate special energetically very useful pull or traction within the inner structures of the body. Upwards and down. So that more and more I can melt into the slight and nevertheless dynamic and powerful flow. Center driven. Also with the other arm. Swinging. And when I do this simultaneously to the front and back side, we would tune in to one of the loosening exercises of Master Wang. Swinging back and forth. Or in a little wider stance. It can lead into some of the silk reeling Qigong exercises, into a full arm circle, swinging through, and again it's the hip joints driving the movement. When I swing into the empty phase with my arm, I result into a complete loop of the so-called cloud sands. And when I change the rotating direction, I swing into a complete loop of brushing the knees. Activating force via the groin and the hinge function of the hip joints.